It is time to engage. Welcome. I gotta ask, has the dream worn off? Or is it still like, oh my god, Picard? In the second episode of this show, when Maps and Legends is the name of episode 2.
Nice title.
It's really cute, Maps and Legends. Picard's a legend, very cute. I feel like at this point, we're like, okay, this is on once a week now. This isn't some kind of like weird one-time experience. It's not
real.
a short trek. This is happening.
Yeah.
Has it worn off for you?
I mean, it's hard for anything about Picard to kind of wear off completely. I was kind of underwhelmed, but I mean, I'm still going to be excited about the next episode because I'm a sucker. I'm a Trekkie, right? So it's like, all right.
You got me.
They already know they have us, which kind of sometimes that sucks.
Makes them feel like they can be lazy?
Yeah, yeah.
How about you? Has the dream state of it worn off? Is it just a TV show now?
It hasn't worn off, but I agree that I was sort of underwhelmed. I mean, I did fall asleep 5 times during the episode, but I was pretty tired. Okay, what's that look?
I just feel like sometimes I'm always looking for things to like nap to, and you saying that I'm like maybe that one episode it's just like on a loop. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, let's talk really about the pacing of this episode and how it compares to the previous one, and really how it compares to the feeling of the Next Generation. We're going to get into spoiler territory, so you are forewarned. Let's talk about the previous episode and its emphasis on action, and this episode and its emphasis on talking and talking and talking.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Did they seem like they complemented, or did they seem to you like these 2 episodes just didn't agree?
Yeah, sometimes it's good to have to take a breath, right? Like we were looking for that all the time when we were watching Discovery, right? Like we were like, everything is like so dire all the time. I just wish they would just have like a good time sometimes, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
thank God.
Can this be an episode where Michael doesn't cry?
Yeah, exactly, and just kind of relax into things, and have an adventure, but still like be able to joke with each other or whatever. It doesn't have to be like the end of the world every single episode.
Yeah.
So a breather is good, but this was like it took a long, really big breath.
Yeah, I didn't need a breath yet.
You're right. It just got started, and then all of a sudden we're just like, oh, nothing's gonna happen. You know.
Just talking.
And I feel like a lot could have been learned along with a little bit of something else.
Yeah, interesting to say that about the perpetual action. Is Lost in Space actually does have that sort of model where something is always happening. There's metal through the thing, and it's always watchable. I mean, I'm always sort of excited to see what happens next. But I've actually on Twitter I wrote one of the writers. I'm like, can you just let them play cards for a couple of minutes? Just chill out for a minute and let them just be people.
Yeah.
The breath in this one, I agree. It did take a little too long of a breath.
Too early.
Too early.
I wasn't out of breath yet. I mean,
Yeah.
running up the stairs. If I was Jean-Luc, maybe from episode 1. But this to me at least felt like a victim of the production problems they had early on in Picard. You may remember last year there was a moment where all of a sudden, while they were making Picard, they stopped shooting it, took a breath, fixed some things, and then went back into it. And everything about this episode feels like, oh yeah, you really this was not working, and this is really where it's showing. I think that entire Mars Attacks opening, which every time I say it just makes me think of something else. The entire Mars Attacks opening was not originally a part of this episode. This was shot afterwards and added in, which, I'm glad we got to see what the synthetic life forms look like, the fact that they look like Data, the fact that they're the actor that Data makeup was used on in Star Trek Las Vegas Experience is pretty neat. Like, there's good Star Trek-y stuff sort of bound in there. The hell yeah thing. Like, there was some good fun happening there.
I like that scene. I actually do. Whether it was shot after or not, I think it was great. It gives us a little backstory. One of the things I wasn't crazy about was, sometimes when sometimes racism is depicted and it's too obvious, they're not people. It's like, you don't have to say it.
You've been working with this
thing. We know
thing.
you don't like them. You don't have to say it out loud.
Yeah.
I think Bill Burr has has a joke about that. You know, whenever there's movies about racism, there's always somebody who's so cartoonishly racist. You know, he's like, there's black people swimming. It's like, hey, get out of the pool. You know,
right?
It doesn't have
it's
to
like
be
a green,
so
like a
on
green
the
book
nose.
with the glasses. It's like, I don't like black people, so I'm gonna, like remove these glasses and throw them in the garbage, and then he's not even really that racist later.
Need
it doesn't make sense. But
Green Book's a terrible movie.
It's awful. But I will die on that hill. Anyway, and I found with this, what I found is similar is that it was so overt, all the jokes that came up on the same day that he decided to do it. I just, you know what I mean? Like if they're not like separate instances.
Yeah. There's a phrase in writing called chowder spout, which it basically means you have to say a bunch of expository bullshit. You need to say so much stuff it's going to drag the scene down, but you got to get the chowder spout out. The chowder's got to come out or the audience doesn't know it's there. This episode, front to back, felt like a chowder spout. And that episode that was that moment, that hook off the beginning that was cut into it, added to the chowder spoutiness of it. If you're going to go back and fix it, it didn't need more chowder spouting.
Yeah, because it also gives this feeling like that they have feelings, that these androids or synthetics have had feelings, because it's like, oh, I was pissed off, you pissed me off this day because you said all these things. But then it's like, that might paint them into a corner later with writing, because it's like, oh, well, they don't have feelings like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I would have preferred if they didn't have all of this sort of, the overt stuff. Because racism, any kind of racism, generally is way more subtle than that. Than like a, hey, you're a...
Yeah.
And Star Trek is not a place for racism. That's the point of the Federation. I guess, the idea that there are things to be afraid of.
But if they're not real, if they're not considered real, to people. But I feel like they should have gotten past that, because it's like they've been using synthetics for like
at least a little while at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be, if it was 14 years ago, it would be 5 or 6 years after Data died. But Bruce Maddox, during the entire film series of Star Trek, you don't get the idea that there are other Datas running around. So, maybe these things are new, but they're no newer than your iPhone, and you're not afraid of, your iPhone. It's just a really weird, or your AirPods. Like, they're a couple of years old, but hey, they're cool. Unless you watch Doctor Who.
Clunky, I guess.
Yeah.
I think clunky is exactly the right word.
Well, Culpepper she was hired to direct 2 episodes, and she wound up directing 3. And I think the fact that this episode didn't appear to come to a conclusion, it just stopped and credits played, makes me feel like this episode, we were probably 2/3 of the way through episode 2 when they were like, I guess this is the end? So that they could make episode 3 into what episode 3 is. This was all like a post-production editing fix and change. There are scenes on cutting room floors, and there are extra scenes added in to make this into the structure it has. And we were talking earlier about this idea of bingeable television, how the writing should be structured for the delivery, the medium and the message, and the way they live together. Powys, how do you feel about this show being delivered, what's called drip-fed every week, if this is the structure and the way they tell the story?
As opposed
do they fit?
As opposed to like a Netflix.
The Netflix binge, or
thing.
the Apple TV Plus hybrid model.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with waiting a week for the show. I'm fine with thinking about it for the previous week and discussing. And I don't need to binge everything. I think I prefer the opposite of binge. Yeah. Ideally.
Now, Vanya, do you feel like this show is built to be watched every week?
I feel like, I don't mind watching it every week if it's designed to be watched every week. Where it ends in a way that it doesn't feel like I have to watch. This is ending in a way where the next episode should just be there. Where, if you watch previous Star Trek, which is obviously more episodic, then you're like, you have the satisfaction of the ending of the episode that will carry you to the next week. But this is not actually modeled like what you're saying with the writing to how its design is to kind of be trickled out.
It's like the writers and CBS All Access aren't on the same page about how this is coming out.
Yeah, I think I'd be really frustrated as a director and a writer to see my work kind of broken up in the wrong way. It's like ending, if you're watching a film and they, you know, and it's on TV, you know, like when there's commercials, when they try and figure out where those act breaks are, right? Where, you know, if you're watching Lord of the Rings, and, you know, he's like, oh, okay, this is the Fellowship of the Ring. He even says that, and you're like, that's a great place to be like...
Tide commercial.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but this is awkward. Like, we're feeling, like the breaks are coming in, you know, at maybe the wrong time, because the design is not there. The last episode felt like, okay, I see what... This seems like it's going to be pretty episodic, and it'll be, you know, a right fit. But then they kind of botched it again.
Now, caveat here, we are potentially given an extra problem because we're in Canada and we're watching this show on a streaming service that is associated with the only television station on planet Earth currently playing Star Trek. If you're watching a pirated version of Star Trek, you're probably getting it from Canada because it's super easy to pirate in Canada. But when you watch it on the streaming service that's associated with it, there's these weird fades to black happening. I'd love to hear, if you're watching it on Amazon or on CBS All Access, does it feel as clunky as it does for us? Because it feels real clunky, which, you know, I would not be surprised if it's just being assembled poorly in Canada. Because that's, you know, Canada's not the best at repurposing content. Nobody's the best at repurposing content.
I think we should give them benefit of the doubt, you know. I think maybe it is a bumpy sort of start. I mean, the first episode I really thought was fantastic. This one I thought was pretty much inert. And so, you know, I think over the course of the first season, I think we're going to get to a place where it all sort of evens out in the wash, you know.
Well, they're starting to feel like long movies. Like a season of Discovery feels like a movie that went on too long, as opposed to, say, the 3 episodes in the final season of Enterprise. When Manny Kato was in charge of Enterprise, he'd put things out in 3-episode arcs. And they wound up being like a great beginning episode, middle episode, end episode. Each episode made you feel like you had gotten a very fulsome television experience, but you knew something had come before or after it, or there was more to come, or you had just concluded something big. And I feel like this series of 3 episodes that Culpepper's directing might wind up having that feeling in the end. But this second episode just did not hit in a way that made it belong as the second act.
Can I ask something to you? Do you feel that do you feel that there was anything in this episode that you hadn't really seen before?
I mean, I thought it was a little bit hat on a hat to have the secret police of the Romulans have a secreter police inside of them. It's like a donut hole in a donut hole. Like it's a little bit too much for me. The Zad Vash, I believe they're called. Not to be confused with Zat Other Vash, which is Picard's girlfriend. It's very confusing.
That's funny. I don't know if. I don't know that I need to see everything be completely new every week. I just want it to feel like it's going somewhere, you know? And so this was kind of like, there was a lot of exposition in this and a lot of time to take to tell us who all the players were and like this underbelly kind of thing. But I was kind of like, well, I hope next week is like kind of like
bring that together.
Wraps it all together. But it's frustrating to know there's 10 episodes. That's really frustrating to know.
That was 10% of Picard.
If there were 13 episodes, I'd feel a lot better. But that we're now looking at an episode, is there going to be another arc within this? Do you know what I mean? Where we're going to have another episode where nothing kind of happens? Or is this just the beginning and we're getting like 3 setup episodes, you know, that set the whole thing, and then because we know that maybe not everybody knows, but it looks like 7 of 9. It looks like Jerry Ryan's in like, I want to say like 5 episodes.
Okay.
And
it seems like it starts on Earth, which leads me to believe it's got to be next week. because we're pretty soon going to have to get into space for this mission of she's definitely not on a planet Earth.
I'm feeling like it'll be on Earth again next week, and at the end of the episode we'll find out, okay, we're going, I mean, maybe that'll be it. I don't know. But like, it's just kind of, that's the problem with this design, right? Like, it's not quite right, because we can't kind of pin down how we should feel about it, which we keep getting these new models of things, right? First it was like episodic TV, then everybody got used to binging everything, then they started changing everything so it was bingeable. Now we're kind of like somewhere in this, we're like in a limbo of like how to watch TV.
And the idea that this is a TV series with a ridiculously large budget that allows it to have cinematic aspects to it kind of makes an episode where all they do is sit down and talk.
Yeah.
Like, Measure of a Man is a talky episode.
Oh, sure.
But, oh my God, that is an episode that is dealing with things head on, and you come to a beautiful philosophical conclusion after two ideas have gone head to head. And I feel like we're going to have to start comparing an entire season of Picard to, like, an episode or a two-parter of The Next Generation, because this is not an action-adventure series. This so far doesn't appear to be, like, it's about the performances, because we've got this, grand old man of Shakespeare, but we've got this trouble that is very internal, and we're watching it slowly come out in certain places. We watched, Starfleet just strip him down. Poise, what did you think of that scene where we got another F-bomb in Star Trek?
I was actually had that in my notes. I don't need the swearing in Star Trek. I don't. I got swearing everywhere else. Swearing is so commonplace. I don't need it in my Star Trek. It doesn't add anything to it, really.
There was one time where I thought a out-of-place word in Star Trek was perfection. And to me, it was Data with his emotion chip as the saucer section is about to crash, and he says, "Oh, shit."
That's right.
And you're like, that's a character choice that's beautiful.
Sure.
And, you're making a movie for the first time. You can do it. Like, I feel like Star Trek has so far done a very bad job of motivating F-bombs.
Yeah, and it was, what was it? Sheer fucking hubris was the actual quote, right? I was like, come on. Would she say that to, like,
I think
Captain
she would.
Picard, Admiral Picard? I mean, does it feel organic?
I think she would, because she's very angry. I don't know that we need to have that word, but I think that she would. But Star Trek you've always had, like, people who are really angry who just manage not to say the swear or whatever. I don't necessarily mind the swear so much. I know that they could do without. I know they can do without it.
Yeah.
Since I have a potty mouth, I obviously don't. I'm
Same
not
here.
concerned. But my problem with that particular scene, should I tell you?
Yeah.
My problem with that particular scene was that I feel like he's like a great negotiator. He's a great diplomat. Like, we know that about Picard already. So unless it's like his condition, his parietal lobe situation,
syndrome,
is affecting him, he really handled that really poorly.
Yep.
Like, I feel like she was really angry and she was very emotional. She brought a lot of emotion to her decision. But how could she not? He stood up and he yelled at her.
Yeah.
And even if she said those things to him, I think he would have been able to handle it better. He also did ask for a million things all at once without even giving her an opportunity to, like, process what he was telling her.
With no evidence that the kooky things the 90-year-old man was saying might be true.
He did. And this is a person who we know is really thoughtful about his decisions and how he speaks to people. We know that. So unless that's part of his condition, he's almost like a completely different human being in that scene.
Now, do we feel like that was a deliberate choice to say we have a different Picard now? Or was this just bad?
I think it's probably Patrick Stewart's choice, I think especially after coming off Logan, you can show how a character can evolve. He doesn't have to be the same guy, he can be in sort of the waning years I think that's probably a little bit of Patrick Stewart's input there, saying, I want to have a more complex guy who's changed over the last 20, 30 years. That's my thought.
Yeah, it feels to me, I agree, it feels very inconsistent, but maybe this is a deliberate choice to make him bad at this. He's rusty. He's used to dealing with two Romulans who owe him their lives and vines.
And getting his way. He's also used to getting his way before. Yeah. But honestly, I know that everybody's always on his side, even Trekkies, love, he's so beloved. He's one of arguably the most beloved character in Star Trek. And, but I kind of didn't mind him getting a slap on the wrist and being put in his place, because it was just so, it was hubris. It was pretty rude of him to just come in and just demand a bunch of stuff.
But you can also see a bit of his ego in the thing. He comes to the front desk and he's like,
it's me.
It's me.
And this,
that's what I mean.
This kid who doesn't even have hair in funny places has no idea who you are.
No, but I mean, that's part of it. He is.
And you can see his reaction. He's like,
and he's right to feel that kind of arrogance. I think that he has earned that kind of swagger, but at the same time, he was there to kind of put her in her place, and when he was asking for a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind him to get a little spank, because he the character I think needed it.
Now, if this could have been any admiral in the history of Star Trek, instead of someone we've never met before, who would it have been? If you could have had it.
Good one.
He obviously has a pretty good conversation with Janeway. Right. That's happened in the movies.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting to see Nechayev just give him none of it. There are a lot of interesting admirals this could have been, and it was just somebody we'd never met.
That'd be brilliant. I had never thought about that.
Well, I guess
pretty cool.
By not giving us someone we've met before, even though all these day players like to work. They're telling us that Starfleet has changed. It's changed over. There are faces we don't recognize, which is interesting. Right. Because let's now hop over to other things that seem to happen at Starfleet HQ, because it seems like lots of Romulans are pretending to be humans and Vulcans.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of getting to see an interesting Vulcan character? They put the infinite diversity and infinite combination, the Vulcan symbol there to make it really obvious this is a Vulcan. And then, it's a Romulan, right? Straight up a Romulan. And then she's working with another Romulan.
Yeah. So the thing is, I was like, is she a really Romulan? Is she just a Vulcan?
Unification Vulcan?
I was thinking, Vulcan. I kept thinking about unification. Maybe she's just like that, because she seemed very Vulcan.
Which might just be
a
good job.
Maybe just be
Did she? I saw a bit of anger in there.
She seemed Vulcan in her conversation with the Admiral.
With
the Commodore did.
Yeah.
But then when the Commodore was dealing with the Lieutenant Roundears, there was
more sort of...
There was a bit more passion to it.
Vulcan, we know Vulcans can get that way. They can get and they'll just logic away why they had a fiery moment. We know them to be they're kind of wishy-washy on their emotions sometimes. They get like that.
But that whole scene between Commodore Vulcan and Commodore O, I think is her name, and the Lieutenant, did you notice that they said nothing?
They didn't get any.
That scene didn't what's called turn.
Yeah.
When a scene turns when something goes from alive to dead, when something goes from unknown to known.
Yeah.
That scene went basically along the lines of, hey, that thing you're doing? Keep doing it. Which to me made it feel like that entire scene was just for the benefit of the audience.
Yeah, because it basically, that scene is a microcosm for how the whole entire episode went to me, because I was it lacked a certain energy, and I was like, what? Okay. It happened. I kept forgetting things that had happened in the episode, I had to keep reminding myself, oh yeah, okay, now we're here. Oh, okay, now we're here. Oh, this person matters because, right? And I feel like it's got to be driven. I feel I don't know if it's direction or if it's just the story, I really don't think I don't think it's direction. I felt like it was what they had to say.
Do you remember that scene where they're looking at the apartment and it's sort of cutting back and forth.
Yes.
Between.
Yeah, which is very 21st century.
I didn't like that scene at all. It didn't feel. It was confusing. Like
it seemed like an unmotivated intercut.
It was intercutting. Why are we? Yeah. What do? You know, and so it just kept throwing me around for a while. And we've seen lots of intercuts before, and they flow organically, and you know where you are in time and space.
When they work, they flow organically.
Yeah. In this case, it was just, why are we doing this? What's past, present? Where are we? Yeah. And because of the way the camera was set up, I couldn't tell where we were at what time.
Especially because it's the same two people
having
the conversation. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I found that quite bizarre. It is interesting now to find out that Picard's two Romulans are like former Tal Shiar operatives who are now just like having a nice time with a vineyard. That I thought was fascinating.
I also like the continued secrecy of Romulans, because Romulans are like super shady. Yeah, super shady. Always super secrety. You know, they cloak. You know, they have like the whole thing.
Yep.
So I like that was carried on. I kind of didn't mind them having like another like, you know,
Secret Service inside their Secret Service.
Yeah, that's something that Romulans would definitely do, right? Like they're so secrety.
If anybody's going to,
it's gonna be them.
Yeah. So on the topic of Romulans, let's discuss the Romulan Free State and this, I guess, archaeological dig, like an intergovernmental archaeological dig happening in Romulan space on this Borg artifact. It's been, I think, about 16 years since they had an assimilation, which is an amusing little workplace thing, but it also lets you know how long they've had this thing.
Right.
How's it feel to be doing something so inert with the Borg to you?
As opposed to,
oh no, they're coming and going to assimilate us.
Right. Well, we know that there's probably, what I like about that is that we know that there's going to be a growing threat. We know the Borg are going to get reactivated in some way and start, you know, screwing people and stuff. You know, probably that's not the appropriate word.
Sounds hot. How did you feel about this strange, inert Borg?
I don't know. I feel like, again, it's like this thing that should bother me more, you know, or give me like sort of like, oh no feelings. But in this episode, like I was like, okay. I was like, hot Romulan. Like I was thinking more about that than
like hot Romulan and hot android didn't even have sex. They just talked about it after having sex. Like the things that you could put in the episode as opposed to the things you're just talking about. It's a very talky episode.
And I don't mind a talky episode, like you said, Measure of Man. But you know, when you talk about something like Measure of Man, it's like a crux for so many things, because Data is so integral to the overall story of TNG, that particular storytelling tells you a lot about his trajectory, you know, from then on. Because I even watched Offspring when he creates Lul, and there are things in that episode that are said that are very key to what I think Picard, I hope, is going to be. Data is talking to Lul about like why he tries to become human, and he knows that he'll never reach his goal. He says that like it doesn't matter; it's the effort that yields the rewards, right? So that's more about humanity than about himself. And there's two synthetic people talking about the fact that they're gonna keep striving for something to become better, even though they know they can't ever get there. And then also, in that same episode, Picard says they're synthetic people who their rights and privileges have been defined already in our society. And then he says something like, I'm paraphrasing, he says, and I helped define them. So it's like, you know, we have like that comes from Measure of a Man, like that's connected to another episode. These are the kinds of things that we should be talking about in this show, you know? So they should maybe go back and watch that and see how much like meat there is.
Yeah, I feel like to prep for writing this, you got to watch every essential episode about Data, you also need to go in and watch a lot of Romulan stories because they are all of a sudden deciding Romulans have a problem with androids. I am fascinated by this Butlerian jihad that's also happened on Romulus thousands of years ago, it seems.
I do love that concept. You know, the fact that Romulans have apparently never had any AI, never...
It's pretty fascinating.
That is very fascinating.
Is this like a religious choice, or did they have a bad experience? That is something I'd like to find out.
Yeah.
Because, you know, in Battlestar Galactica, the reboot series, there's this idea that we made a wild mistake with artificial intelligence, and so now we unplug everything, nothing is networked, we cannot let this happen again. I'm really curious if this is something that the Romulans have always had, in which case, what is their opinion of the Borg? Because this archaeological dig is happening in their space, and it's not... It seems like it's not the kind of homeworld it felt like in the first episode. Now it feels like it's just a like an international space station where a bunch of different people are there, but it happens to be owned by the Romulans.
It's like Deep Space Nine. You know, you got a little...
Yeah, you got everybody there, but it's owned by it's owned by the Federation, but it was built by somebody else.
Yeah, there's like a quark in the bar inside there.
Yes,
Making some drinks.
Oh, I want that.
But I feel like if they're gonna be talking so much, they didn't talk about anything. They didn't talk even about the philosophies of what they're talking about. Because when Alison Pill comes to his house, I don't even really remember that conversation.
There's a joke about not liking science fiction.
Yeah, I saw that.
You know, and yeah, we know that he likes mysteries. You know, he's Dixon Hill. And so this is a mystery, like, to him, which would be exciting to his character, which makes a lot of sense. But she was talking about, she was kind of like having emotional moment. I don't remember exactly what her emotional moment was. I feel like I should. But I feel like those ideas about, you know, what humanity is, what the synthetics are, you know, how Romulans feel about them, those are all good discussions that could have been had, you know, in this episode.
Here's my question. At some point, do we get tired of the synthetic who wants to be human and rebels, Westworld, iRobot? I mean, do we just sort of get...
I'll tell you why.
wants to be a
real boy.
I'll tell you why I don't think so. That. I think it's a mirror of ourselves, right? We're trying to remind ourselves. It's like, I'll bring up Battlestar again. It's like, Adama says something like, I'm definitely paraphrasing, where he says, like, how do we prove, like, what's our proof that we even belong here, that we
that we deserve
to be here, right? So I feel like the reason why those stories keep being made is like a reminder that other people, if they could have it, if they could have our emotions and our, you know, our imagination, that they would be grateful, you know, and we take it for granted. And so we have to keep, like, reminding ourselves that. So I actually don't think... and exactly. So I feel like with Star Trek, Star Trek's a perfect medium to remind us of our humanity, and using Data, like, and his story as an example, or, like, synthetics, is a really good idea. Like, I think it's a good idea. It's how it's executed is, you know, another story.
Yeah. Now, I have a question for you guys. How do you feel about the fact that Picard is the first time we have ever had a Star Trek series premiere in 1 hour? Every Star Trek series, except for, of course, the original series, every Star Trek series that's happened since the original series has had a 2-hour premiere. Whether it was Encounter at Farpoint Part 1 and Part 2, or it was, you know, even Discovery, had a 2-hour big splash. Picard, who we already know, we've met this character, he's not premiering, his show is. We're now 2 hours into this. Does this show feel premiered in a bulkier way now that it's been 2 hours? Or do we just feel like hour 1 was the premiere and that's it?
Well, they created hour 1 like it was the premiere. You know, which they probably should have had it be longer and taken some of this stuff, not all of it, and made it into a bigger premiere, and then got rid of, like, all the stuff they didn't need.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I feel like episode 1 and episode 2, if you put them in a blender
and
then poured them out, you'd have 2 smoothies that are like the right amount of action and the right amount of talk.
I think you're right.
But right now, it's like one ingredient went into the premiere, and a whole other ingredients in the other premiere, and it kind of makes them both not taste like Star Trek.
Yeah, because then it takes away the tone. In a way, the second episode kind of strips the first episode of the tone that we think we're in. Now we don't actually. We're like, oh, I think I know where this is going. Like, I feel this. And then this is like, oh, do I even know what's happening?
Are we just going to sit and talk a lot?
Okay. Yeah, like, and that's fine. You know what I mean? I love Mad Men. All they do is talk. That's it. Yep. That's the whole show.
Except for the one time with the tractor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Anyway.
But it's like, dog, and I don't mind that. You know, I don't need everybody to break out.
We don't need to have action
break out in a fight.
Right? 12 Angry Men is one of the best films of all time.
Sure.
And they sit around a board table for 2 hours.
Yeah.
12 men talk for 2 hours on a table.
To be
fair, it's incredible and it's riveting.
That's because it's a play.
Yeah, that's true.
And they just shot the play without any imagination.
Right.
It's not a bad
this
thing.
This is a harder
it's just a
task.
choice. Yeah, this is currently a chamber piece, if the chamber is planet Earth. And we'll be going into the stars at some point. But how do you feel about the fact that we have ended 2 episodes now, neither one with Picard? Both episodes have ended with some kind of, basically they've both ended with Dreamboat Romulan.
Well, I'm going to say this. I feel like that's one area, if we're going to bring up, that Discovery kicks this ass, because we know who the protagonist is. It comes back to Michael every time. We're like, Michael, yeah, she's our star, right? And that's like, they've already in 2 episodes, Discovery's blown them out of the water in that sense, right?
Agreed.
Because I feel like I like Discovery. I know other people feel differently, but like, I love it. It's growing on me even more. But I feel like it kind of, in some ways, knows more what it is. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it certainly has more to prove, because it needs to tell us that this person who's not a captain is the person we should be following. Whereas we know we're watching a show called Picard. That's not Star Trek like Michael.
Yeah.
This is Star Trek Picard.
Yeah.
And A, it's someone we already love, and B, his name is in the show.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's less to prove for this show, because I'd watch Jean-Luc eat soup. Like, whatever he does is fascinating.
Maybe not soup.
I watch him drink wine.
Yeah, soup is good. It's funny. Soup's really funny though.
Earl Grey.
Which, did we notice that the tea came in tea bags? Like, we don't have a replicator right there?
Interesting.
I don't know.
That's kind of
old-fashioned.
It's like people with records now.
Sometimes you want the Nespresso. Sometimes you want to cook it, do it by hand over fire.
I do wish it wasn't in a bag though. I wish it was like a strainer. Like that would have been like.
Well, the fact
making their own dough. Some people make their own dough now.
Like scooping out loose leaf in there.
Although the fact that he could just put it in the Replimat and have it get atomized and turned into his next tea, I guess is fine as well.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. Like, I feel like, they have it is a harder task for the Discovery, and with this, Picard, like, I feel like that scene where he goes to meet the woman who will, I guess, get him a ship.
Oh, at Vasquez Rock.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right? It's so cool.
So like, good to see those Star Trek landmarks.
That was nice.
In her 24th century Airstream.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
I kind of wish that was the end of the episode.
Me too.
Because I was like, it landed on him. It's cheeky. It gives you energy. Like, it gives a bounce to the episode, and then it kind of gets lost in there somewhere. Yeah. I don't actually know. I can't remember where it lands in the.
Something?
In the episode.
We were talking about this earlier. What was the end of the episode? I don't remember exactly how it ended.
Rami Dreamboat and his sister were having a chat about information we pretty much already knew.
That's what
there's a lot of information we already knew. And question for you about Rami Dreamboat and his sister. Do we think that is his sister, or when he was talking about losing a brother, has his brother undergone every kind of transformation possible to become this lieutenant?
You're kidding.
Yeah,
I don't know.
No, I like
he
that.
lost a brother, and we just found out that this is his sibling. I just think that would be an interesting identity.
That would be really cool.
It would be.
Yeah. I hope that's what it is.
Wouldn't that be neat?
Yeah, and
But you notice how he recoiled when she tried to like touch his face, right? Maybe there's
She's also not physically there.
Yeah.
There's another layer of maybe some incest going on.
Or maybe when a hologram touches you, it's
Lannister
maybe
action.
It feels weird.
Maybe it's a Lannister thing, with the whole maybe added layer of that with the changing and the
walked through her.
Yeah.
But did he do that on purpose?
He did.
It's like hanging up on someone.
I don't need you.
Yeah. I think that would be really cool if if you're gonna end the episode and not have it end on Picard, then just have her arrive in his space and have like a very quick or just have her show up, and that's we've pinpointed the guy, and then
if it just started with brother, and then you end it, and you'd be like, that actually makes me wonder what's gonna come next.
That would be like almost akin to seeing the cube, and you're ending on this okay, we're ending on Romulans again, but this is like,
but it's also a repeated beat of okay, the Commodore and this lieutenant are actually working with the evil Romulans, and then guess what? This very suspicious Romulan is working with the evil Romulans. Is again hat on a hat. You're like, this beat has already happened. I don't care.
So maybe if they did it like a third time, it's like comedy. Like
it's like the third one, it's funny.
If she goes to his room and then she goes to what the sister's room, and she's like, you're like, oh, it's like a triple. No.
Right? Now I guess this guy really makes his bed unless he's had a girl over. Because she looked at a messy bed and was like, I see you've obviously been having sex in this bed.
No, I just woke up.
Yeah. It's like, you don't know what time zone it is.
5 minutes ago.
Yeah. You totally banged.
Yeah. I recognize your bang sheets, although that might go back to your incest question. Maybe that's why she knows what bang sheets look like for her brother. It's a little weird.
Disgusting.
I wanted to say something else, but I tried to keep it clean.
Now, we got to see two splines, really, two visual effects splines from 3D models from Discovery in this episode. We got to see a 140-year-old Discovery shuttle as a taxi cab in this, which was interesting.
Yes.
Is that a 140-year-old cab? Is that what they do with them? Do they obviously Ford does not make these things? Did they just slap a new coat of paint on there? Or is this like the Excelsior where it's such a good design they just use it for like decades and decades? Interesting question.
I want to believe that it's 140 years old and they're just like, we'll make these ones into taxis now.
Taxi?
Yeah, because that's fun.
I like that one too. Now,
I do that.
I have a question for you about the second spline we got to see.
Would it still be functional after 140 years?
It could be. I mean, the Excelsior's kicked around for 80. And that's a full-on, out in the final frontier, 80-year-old ship. I mean, I wouldn't. It's like it's like driving the Model T around. But it's an interesting choice. The other spline, and the one that I think is going to stab people in the heart a little bit more if they don't like Discovery, is that when Picard looks up and sees an Enterprise, he sees the Discovery Enterprise. He sees Pike's weird 25% different, if you want to believe that, version of the Enterprise with the double pylons and the which is going to drive people crazy if they remember what the Enterprise looked like in other TNG and in other Deep Space Nine specifically era versions. It's the regular original Enterprise done pretty. In all of our previous versions of seeing what even the Defiant in the Mirror episodes of Enterprise, this is what they look like, and now all of a sudden this is what they look like. Did that matter to you as much as it mattered to me? Am I just chewing on a bone I don't need to?
Chewing on the bone.
Yeah? What do you think?
Because it's a newer show, newer visual effects, they probably think, maybe let's just tweak it a little bit. Let's just make it look a little prettier for 2020.
They prettied the hell out of that on Enterprise.
I will say it's going to bother people. It doesn't bother me particularly, but I kind of like this this solidarity in line with Discovery, because that's what's happening right now.
Oh, Alex Kurtzman has solidarity with himself. Straight up.
Ooh. But you know what I mean? Ooh. I like it's like a nod to what they're doing as a whole, and I can appreciate that.
It is like retcon dovetail to make you be like, see how Discovery fits? See how it fits?
It's like Return of the Jedi. It's like going back and changing the Emperor a little bit. So hey, it's the same Palpatine. It's not a different actor. Return of the Jedi.
As in Empire.
Replacing the actor and all that.
But I will say, but they did that. But they didn't. But is anybody going to talk about control? Like, the idea of control is really bothering me.
Yeah.
The idea that we've dealt with kind of like an
AI artificial problems,
which was a huge problem.
Yeah.
And messed up a lot of stuff. And then now we're just like, seem surprised.
This is totally unrelated.
It's completely crazy that this could happen to us.
Yeah, it's like it's like holographic life forms, synth life forms, and an AI. Like, they're three different things entirely, and are in no way connected by the fact that they're all based on computers. Like, I don't know. I feel like because you can just swap out a drive and you've got just a different shape for the same brain. This is clearly, you're right, something that should be also dovetailing. You made Discovery.
Well, you made it, yeah. So it's kind of like, all right. Even if somebody just mentions it, like Control, I would be really happy.
Well, and I guess because we've created a version of Picard that's outside of Starfleet, and when he goes in to chat with any admiral at Starfleet, it's not a Section 31 operative. It's just an admiral at Starfleet.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have that information.
Sure.
Which you would think at least Bruce Maddox would have some sense of that, and his entire synth department would have some idea.
Where is he, Bruce Maddox?
Is that actor alive? I still don't know.
He's alive. I looked him up this morning.
Oh, yeah, because I looked him up, but he hasn't done anything in a long time.
Maybe he's doing theater or something, teaching, who knows.
Yeah.
But it gave me a thought.
Yeah.
The whole being sort of afraid or sort of ill-treating, these new sort of synths. We've had doctors and we've had holograms. Wouldn't people at this stage just be like, oh yeah, it's just...
until they kill your uncle on Mars.
Until it's like...
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying
like a slaughter.
I'm saying even when they're on Mars, I'm just like, you know what artificial, life forms are like.
Yeah.
They're in your ships and they're working with you. How is it suddenly you're like, oh, I don't know if I trust...
Well, that's why it's been...
Why would you?
It's been, 15 years since Voyager came home, or maybe more like 8 years by the time Voyager came home, when the Utopia Planitia attack happens. So at that point, we have at least one hologram who people want to have be a person.
Right.
And in Janeway's future, he's just kicking around like a normal human would.
Right.
So I feel like there are a bunch of different future versions of Starfleet that are more or less accepting of this. And clearly, in Janeway's future, there was not a Utopia Planitia Mars attack. Because if so, we would be dealing with the fallout of synthetic life form in the form of the Doctor. Who I think chose Bob as his name?
He did.
I think he was named Bob in that episode. Robert Picardo. It works.
Sure.
Just named himself.
I'm just like, sometimes Voyager.
But I'm also thinking that I'm also thinking at that stage, I think the other holographic doctors would probably go like, what the hell?
What about us?
He's got a mobile emitter. He can move around and do whatever. Maybe I want to do a little something.
Maybe.
Yeah, and do the mobile emitters, this is going off on a totally other tangent, but do these mobile emitters wind up being something that becomes widespread? And if so, then you've got a whole other kind of synthetic life that is not even being touched in Picard. And so, obviously, the android robotics department wouldn't be working in holographic life, but there is crossover.
Sure.
You've got a complex piece of software that has attained sentience.
That's right.
On the USS Voyager.
Arguably more dangerous.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they're just inside there.
And can go anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
Data, you can
as
just lock them up.
As you were saying last week.
Although, interesting question, do these synths have Wi-Fi? because it seems like he was hell yeah having a great time, and then F8 had a download,
Right?
And then or like an update. I don't know. It looked like he was updated from elsewhere
Or directive.
Or the other question is, was it a time-based directive? And who do we think did it? Do we think this is the Romulans getting in and doing the synths dirty to specifically get another group of humanoids to hate synthetic life forms the same way they do?
Because it's crazy. Like it doesn't. We're gonna definitely. I feel like we're definitely gonna find out it's not the synth's fault at all, and it's definitely like somebody that has controlled them to do it. I mean, I think that's where this
feels like an iRobot situation.
It could be the whole sort of false flag thing that we've seen a few times in real life as well. Like supposedly with World War II, and those are false attacks supposedly on this German embassy. It could simply be a sort of a rogue faction of Starfleet. So it's like, I want to outlaw these friggin' Siths.
Yeah.
So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna.
What if it's Section 31 being like, this is too much like Control, and they decide to kill a few thousand people in order to outlaw it?
Maybe.
Then that would solve your problem.
That's good.
And maybe the Zhat Vash and Section 31 are like, listen, this is going to be a problem for you. It was a problem for us. You should do this thing. It would be worth it.
Yeah, that's a possibility, and that would solve what I was thinking
This
about.
obvious.
But then I also am like, is it somebody who wanted to get back, like, at somebody else who was anti-Romulan, who just wanted to be
one of those 14 member planets that was willing to pull out of the Federation if they were to help,
and kind of wanted to put Picard in his place, have them pull out of helping the Romulans, so that the Romulans are like.
There's a lot of candidates. A lot of people wanted the Romulans not to survive.
So many people.
And that idea that the Federation does get to choose who lives and who dies. Mm-hmm. When that admiral said that, and again, this whole Starfleet Federation thing is strange. Who does get to choose? Because
they are intertwined.
Starfleet's basically NASA, and the United Federation of Planets is basically the UN, and they're related, but they're not. The Venn diagram does not overlap entirely.
No, but they definitely come to there's definitely crossover.
Mm-hmm. It's the military and scientific arm,
right,
and the research arm, and so many elements of how they're able to do any of what the Federation does. But Starfleet is what is basically becoming a militarized faction in a lot of the Deep Space Nine storylines, the ones that show us we had to be prepared for the Borg, and then all of these weapon engineers took over Starfleet, and engineering became about how big is the gun, not how much can the ship explore.
And I guess that's what Picard was trying to save Starfleet from becoming, just that they could be humanitarians.
Well, and really the design difference between the Galaxy class and the Sovereign class, the Enterprise D to the Enterprise E, shows you the impact of the Borg. Because the Enterprise D is pre-Borg, when it's just, everybody's a bit like us, they're similar in size and weaponry, and then all of a sudden, you've got a ship like a Sovereign class that is designed to battle, and that's its main goal. And it becomes it's less of a target and more of a weapon.
It's a very human response.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and there certainly is an arc to this. There's a very understandable fear that has crept in from the Borg, and now the Romulans, and then the Dominion. There have been a lot of things that have made, really, the Federation question its own existence, whether it will survive. There have been existential problems that have arisen over, 3 shows that took place constantly asking us, will we survive?
Yes.
And now we're looking at a show where everyone seems pretty comfortable where they are, except Romulan assassins are working on Earth. And so now, I would like to ask you guys, did this episode Trek it, or did this episode wreck it? Powys.
Wreck it. For me.
Okay, tell me.
Last one Trekked it. This one wrecked it. This one didn't do it for me. As I go back to the original point, is it felt inert. There was some sort of editing choices and things that didn't feel right for me. There was a lot of talking, and it's not about the talking per se. It was about, it didn't feel like it was moving anything forward quickly enough or more efficiently enough. And overall, it sort of became less about Picard, which I can live with. But because I think they're going for more of an ensemble thing as we move into further episodes.
They need to build the ensemble.
Yeah, I think that's what they're doing. I think this one dropped for me, man. I'm sorry. I love the first one. I don't like the second one.
Now, not so much is it bad TV, but does it feel like Star Trek? Is an interesting question here. Because I'm struggling with that as well. Vanya, what do you feel? Do you feel like this was... Because I feel were a bit disappointed by this compared to last week. But did this episode still Trek it for you?
This is very difficult. Because it's hard to say. Because I could say, well, nothing happened. So how could I say it?
Yeah.
Right? Nothing really happened. So how could I say it's not Star Trek, or how could I say it is? Because nothing happened.
Right.
You know? This is difficult. I mean, it was like great. Because with Picard being there, right, and obviously, but nothing happened. I'm gonna say it wrecked it.
Interesting.
I think no wait.
Oh.
You see, I'm on the fence too, because I think wrecked it is
implies they did something
it's
that
such
was
a
incorrect.
strong word.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what?
Yeah.
It trekked it, but it didn't go anywhere.
Right. So it was bad Star Trek.
Yes.
But it was Star Trek.
But it was still Star Trek.
Is there a third choice?
Nope.
Trek
it or wreck it. Either it's Star Trek or bad. Star Trek or bad Star Trek is still trekking it. Because we have had good episodes of this show that have wrecked it. Well, of Discovery that have wrecked it, but they were still entertaining. They just were hella not Star Trek. And in this scenario, I've got to say that this episode wrecked it for me. Because there was no philosophical conversation. If you're going to sit down and have a conversation, Roddenberry needs true analogs of our lives.
I want to change my mind again. I want to go back to my original.
Wrecked it?
Not just because you said, but because you're right. Like, it's what I had already said.
And
like, it wrecked, like with Alison Pill, like they didn't even have a conversation about philosophy.
They were talking about tea, and he was excited about tea and not excited about sci-fi. Like, there was nothing... Sometimes in a scene you need to give people some business to do, but the show can't just be the business. The scene has to be the interesting thing happening during that scene.
Right.
And this show was missing that.
Tea commercial.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It can't be that.
No, well, you know.
This episode straight up wrecked it for me.
What's it gonna be?
Wrecked it?
Well, I said it wrecked it originally, and I guess I should stick with my original one.
Well, that's your gut. And what about you?
I'm gonna have to go with wrecked it.
Whew. Okay, so
that was really hard.
That is a real.
That might have been the worst.
It's a hard one.
This show went off a Trek cliff. It went from episode 1 across the board trekked it, which maybe was some nostalgia on our part. But there was some.
It got us in the
There was philosophical questions happening yesterday. So we were or last week. So we were really like starting to dig into that, and this was just again some dumb action off the top, and then a bunch of quiet nothing for an hour. So I'm curious. Will next week round this all out, where we'll be able to say, okay, I see where it was going. Structural problems. Thank goodness Chabon gets in charge of this and Kurtzman steps off to go do something else. Maybe that's how we'll feel next week. Or maybe next week will show that this show got off to a rocky start and it rippled all the way to the end.
It'll go. We know the first season of TNG was...
but they're only doing 3 seasons of this show.
No, Measure of the Man was probably the highlight of season 1.
Yeah, right? But you know, when you have like something like 23 episodes on a network show, then, okay, one episode.
In the 80s. Yeah. We are not at a time right now where you can afford to have episode 1 suck the bag. Episode 2 certainly can't suck the bag. By the time you get to your 3rd episode, you are canceled if you are not out of the gate.
It's kind of like, and you don't have enough episodes. Like, everything should be really tight.
Yeah.
You know, because you only have so much story to tell. So when they just blew an episode.
Yeah, and they're putting movies.
Like Game of Thrones. I mean, the last season, they didn't have enough episodes to tell what they needed.
But
and they were also telling a terrible story.
It really shouldn't be about like it's how you should decide the best stuff to put into your episode. You should make it as tight as.
And this is not
the 10
network
episodes.
Television. This is now in that in-between space where you're going at it with movie money, movie resources. You have movie time to get scripts right. You should be hitting the ground with movie perfect. And
right now,
otherwise, there's no reason for you to be making this badly.
It should be very economical, right? Like they know they only have 10 episodes. They gotta bring it.
Yeah. Look what Kathleen Kennedy
every week.
Kathleen Kennedy just put the all stop on Obi-Wan Kenobi because that show was not doing what it needed to do, and they're going to go back and rewrite everything because that's what you do when it's not working. But CBS seems to have said, "Oh, stop, hold on, let's retool what we shot already and then fix it partway through." And, we're looking at Discovery, where going into season 3, they're rebooting the show. Because they made 2 seasons wrong, I guess. That's the only reason. That's the reason you reboot a show, because you did it wrong.
Let's not say
if
wrong.
If it was working, they wouldn't have changed it.
Hang on a second here, sir. Except for the Klingons, which I'm sorry. It's terrible. I'm sorry. I actually told one of the producers of Discovery that the Klingons just killed it for me.
Oh, that's fair.
I don't need them speaking Klingon for 20 minutes.
When season 3 kicks off, we'll bring you back and see how you feel.
I don't mind.
But season 2 of Discovery, I thought was really good. I felt it was getting into its own. I'm like, I like Discovery.
But now it's like I feel like
I like Discovery now.
I feel like they well, I don't want to get on the whole thing about Discovery, but I feel like they kind of burn themselves, and then they're like, oh. Whoops. Now we just got to send them 1,000 years into the future to get out of this because we built this. Because the foundation of this house is cracked. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And you know what? If they didn't want us to bring up Discovery, they shouldn't have shown us Pike's Discovery Enterprise, and they shouldn't have shown us a Discovery shuttle. So I feel like with that noise in mind, I think we're going to say across the board wrecked it. I'd love to know if you think that this was fantastic Picard Star Trek. I really want to know. Maybe we're all just missing it. Right?
Yeah.
It's possible that everyone on the couch just missed it. I'm really looking forward to the next few episodes. I am going to be out of town next week, so we won't have the episode up right away. We might have a couple stuck together in a couple of weeks, but I will be watching it from Los Angeles. I think I'll be in Los Angeles when it airs, so I'll be close to the Vasquez Rocks. Maybe I'll just watch it there. Anyway, guys, it was awesome to get to do this with you again, and we will see you for the next episode very soon.